Hey everyone, welcome back to State of the Industry, the world's best blockchain podcast. We're here in sunny California, in Silicon Valley, the heart of all of this cool stuff happening in the industry, and we have a special guest that we're going to introduce in a second. Again, I'm Chris Games, co-founder of DEN. I'm here with my two resident blockchain experts, Svet Sadov.
Hi everybody.
Hello.
And today we're focusing on blockchain in the enterprise space. This is a huge topic. It's where we see a lot of the focus of the industry shifting over into, and I'm really excited to dive a lot deeper into this, especially as the industry continues to grow. So first, I'd like to introduce our special guest of the day, Koushik Gavini. He's actually been working closely with the DEN. He's an instructor, and he's also doing a lot of stuff on our blockchain enterprise space. So I wanted to quickly, Koushik, just introduce yourself, let us know a little bit about your background in the space, and then we'll hop into the topics.
Yeah, hi, I'm Koushik Gavini. I've been working on enterprise blockchain, specifically Hyperledger Foundation products, for the last more than 1 to 2 years. So it's quite extensive experience in the growing sector. And I've been noticing the trend where enterprise is going from initiation to now starting to take foundation and implementation.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I know you definitely have a lot of experience working with different companies who have essentially been pioneers in the space. So a little bit later, we'll hear a little bit more about that. But right now, along with everyone else, let's hop into some of the interesting stuff that has been happening in the space in the past week. Starting out with our favorite huge Tony Stark billionaire persona in Silicon Valley, Elon Musk. Connecting with, one of the similar analogs in the blockchain space, Vitalik. So a couple days ago, Elon Musk sparked a crazy storm, a Twitter storm. We've all seen those. We've all been there.
That's what he does.
Yeah, it's what he loves to do. Basically, he brought Vitalik into this conversation about Ethereum and just DLT in general and what the future of it was going to look like. So Vitalik actually was responding and was engaging with him, and he kind of came up with a few different priorities that came out of this discussion as far as the strategic goals of DLT from Vitalik's perspective, Ethereum, including creating a global financial system focusing on identity and reputation, creating registries, innovating on new forms of organizational structure, which I think is an interesting one. Micropayments, privacy, spam prevention, which is huge. As well as rewarding content publishers, which is another cool one that I think we see a lot of people looking into and trying to find cool ways of making that idea happen. Automated market designs, and finally a decentralized internet. So, did any of you guys follow that Twitter exchange closely, or what did you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. At first, it was just Elon just posted Ethereum. That was it. I mean, just one word post.
The best way to start.
One tweet. Yeah. It just says that, and then it just snowballs from there. And it's interesting. At the same time, I think for me, Svet, and people have been in, you guys been in the space for a long time. I don't think anything that Vitalik said was groundbreaking new stuff, but. When Elon says something, it gets a lot of eyes. So for people that, are new to the space, have no idea what's going on, it's good to see, one, that Vitalik is talking about stuff, and the two of them, are getting more eyes on the topic overall, and it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, when I was reading through Vitalik tweets, which were usually long, because Vitalik actually preferred to kind of also use this Musk style, publishing on tweeting only a couple of words or sentences. Now he actually published a whole article in a tweet. And what I noticed, maybe I'm wrong, but he kind of prioritized his future strategic, as you said, the development perspective for obviously Ethereum, but it excludes DLT or all other decentralized ledger technology input at the top. Something very, from my point of view, idealistic. I'm not saying it's wrong to pursue any idealistic type of objectives in our movement. But obviously, as I think, many founders, specifically founders from the period prior to 2014, by their nature, they come to blockchain not only to make money, but also to make a social or even political statement.
That has always been a strong thing that I've noticed in the space, is that as opposed to other industries or focal points, people, especially people making noise in the blockchain and crypto space, they always seem to have some form of a philosophy behind it. And that's actually one of the things that I love about being in the space. And on that topic, I'm actually curious what you think about this kind of development, Koushik.
So as I said, I'm coming from the enterprise blockchain, and we tend to be anti-crypto because it's too volatile for enterprise big systems. But I do see where when I talk to people who are not enterprise blockchain, there's a passion for changing the status quo for the better, using decentralization and crypto and stuff like that. So that has a huge aspect to the other side developers for open blockchain.
Now, I know we're going to dive deeper into this a bit later, but do you see, obviously in this Twitter exchange we have Elon, who I think actually embodies a lot of philosophical, driving force behind what he does, even though he's not specifically in the blockchain space. Do you see any of that in your experience and with the people that you've been working with in the Hyperledger space in this case?
Yeah, so one of the companies that are actively using Hyperledger is Kiva. I don't know if you guys know, it's like a huge nonprofit. They're using Hyperledger. I don't know which framework specifically. When I talked to them, I think it's Fabric, but they may change. But anyway, they're using like a more closed Hyperledger framework to solve African countries with their exchange of monetary values. So instead of having an open blockchain, they're closing it down and putting government regulations on it. So you may think about decentralization as traditional form of blockchain, where there's no one central authority, but it's kind of like a hybrid. They're like, let's keep the traditional rules in place, let's also add new rules on top of it, not like complete overrun where you see in the other side of the blockchain community.
Yeah, that's cool, and I think I can kind of agree with that perception.
Yeah.
I've never, with the people that we've worked with in the enterprise space, on the Hyperledger side especially, I've never gotten the feeling that all they cared about was just upgrading the existing infrastructure.
Yeah,
I feel like the ideals of initially what created Ethereum, created Bitcoin. While they might not be translated exactly, I feel like they're still there in some sense, and I think that's very important for the future growth of the entire sector of all of the technology.
I probably got a question for everybody, because one of the things which actually come to mind after reading this is that maybe if so many founders and developers, key developers, key founders has a same type of mentality, wouldn't it be possible that stops us to look at the blockchain primarily as from point of view of practical applications? Because we are now so concentrated on a beautiful technology, on making it possible for people all across the world to access it, that sometimes we forget that something like spam prevention or some mediocre task may be more important in order to be able to attract people, to actually let people using more that blockchain, average users, right? Because why they come to us? Only because of that, right? So what do you think? It might be one of the reasons why we don't still have like brilliant applications where millions of users every day come to blockchain and use it, even
Yeah, that's a really great topic. One of the problems I'm seeing on the POC applications I'm working with, like when I work with huge enterprises, is the technology is getting there, but to go 100% in, put that underneath your whole technology stack, it's very risky right now. And the problem is education, right? We talk about when blockchain came out, you can kind of correlate it to the cloud or something when first the cloud came out.
The development of the cloud.
Yeah,
Yes.
like now you have cloud services, microservices on the cloud versus monolith infrastructure. Everyone, the developer knows what those are right now. But if you look 10 years ago when the cloud was initially taking off, it was kind of like a buzzword. People knew the high level, they don't know the low level stuff. So actually adapting it to practical use cases, it's maybe beautifully put in. Technology may be there, it makes it work 100%, but trust and being really educated to actually, deliver and deploy it is going to be an extensive process.
And I like the parallel of the development of the cloud because I remember when I first heard about the cloud back in high school, it was this. Again, I wasn't very focused on development at that time, but still, like when I heard about it, it's like this fantastical idea of like cloud computing. Like it was very hard to like formulate an actual idea of what that meant,
or try to explain it to somebody older than you. You know, like,
exactly. But nowadays, it's been such a huge part of the development in general, of the development of the internet and all these different companies that if you don't understand, basic idea behind the cloud, then you're not being very effective at whatever you're doing. So I mean, you think about that, like when were people first talking about trying to introduce the idea of the cloud? Like mid 2000s or a little earlier?
Well, I think it was a lot earlier because we have actually two waves of the cloud.
I mean, like the major push, the main
Yeah,
wave.
what do you mean by major? Because first it was like a cloud data. That was the first push. And the second was a cloud application. That's what the second major push.
So I guess that
because with cloud data, it was maybe mid-19th even, because people started to see that there is not enough space in their own computers to keep all their movies. And then we have, of course, proliferations of these cloud storage services, which basically second half of 90s. And then in the first half of the 2000s, that what happened. Then people start to think, why do I need to pay Microsoft that, I don't know, $100 per month just for one version of their, Microsoft project or something. So, and here's the idea, kind of like a software as a service, and spring from there.
To add on to that, so if you notice the cloud development, actually like the services, like we're going to talk a little bit more about the BOSS services and stuff, which are essentially cloud services. You're taking adoption is coming up right now, actual implementation. As Sweat said, 1990s were when cloud research was being done, right? So if you look at 1990s to 2019, 2020, that's where the money's like raking in right. So the blockchain is going to be here to stay, and it's going to be really interesting. Right now, it's in the hype phase, right?
Yeah.
It's really buzzword right now. You're going to need people educated beyond the buzzword, more technical rigor, and actually analyzing the business use cases that are going to be helpful, right? And once you go through that loop, there's going to be a little bit more adoption, pre-existing infrastructure and stuff. And then you're going to see the adoption, more money breaking in right now. I think the crypto introduced the role to blockchain, but crypto does not equal blockchain. Right? Exactly. I think everyone agrees to that.
Yep.
Can I ask a question? It's a little bit unrelated, but maybe related, because many people expect that after this first wave of the initial adoption, as like us pioneering this one, cryptocurrencies, is there some chance that enterprise blockchain will join the movement somewhere up to the road, somewhere down the road, when they just realize that the issuing their coins on their own platform doesn't make big sense? Why don't they make these coins publicly available? So is it possible?
Yes. Let me just add on to that, right? So when I'm saying enterprise blockchain, I'm primarily mean three attributes, right? The first attribute, it has to be secure, right? Secure meaning it's closed or something. Number two is it has to adapt with the pre-existing tech stack, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more digital transformation, why that's important. And the third thing is it has to be success story. It has to be low downtime, right? That's what I mean. You can't have any bugs in it. And that's why putting new technologies into a big application is extremely risky.
Yeah.
You have to go through 100,000 trials before you go inside it. To add to Sweat's point, can they go inside and join the movement of open blockchain? Yeah, I think that has to be the direction, because enterprises, whether you let's just take a supply chain company, let's go with Walmart, right? Walmart's extensively in blockchain right now, and the reason they're doing that, if you think about it, is because the consumers want it. So if the demand for the consumers, they're going to do it.
So wait, when you say that there's demand from the consumers, where is Walmart seeing demand directly from consumers for blockchain technology?
Yeah, so that's a great That's a great concept or question. So we had a whole rush about quality of food, right? So when you're saying organic, when you're saying if it's organic, is it actually organic, right? There's all this trust issues, right? So I think it was Warren Buffett who said it. I may be quoting wrong, but he said something in business. It takes 30 years to gain a customer's trust. It takes 30 seconds to lose it all, right?
Yeah,
So in any traditional business, or it doesn't have to be traditional or something, gaining the customer's trust is extremely important.
Yeah.
And if you think about how I look at blockchain, it's basically a trust mechanism, right? A digital trust mechanism. And how you go about solving the trust is the core technical concept of blockchain. And when I look at it from enterprise, do I need everybody looking at my business transactions, or do I need only certain people I want in? I don't want my competitors seeing the whole supply chain route.
Yeah.
That's coming into. Let me just answer Shai's point one more time. I don't think I answered directly. I do think it's going to come in. I think we talked about there's going to be some car companies or some.
There's a huge car company consortium that's formed already.
Yeah, and they're using Ethereum based, I believe, or so.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
I think the reason they might do is they might tokenize sales of cars or so. That's a huge thing.
I see. So the first wave is issuing some coins which may be Ethereum based or another currently EOS based, and then through that mechanism, customers will receive that initial access to the cryptocurrencies, and then through trading that particular company cryptocurrency, they can get into the other platforms and then exchange tokens to other tokens, and that's how big corporation can help to draw more users into the cryptocurrency spaces. Your point?
Yeah, exactly. And side note on that is one of the projects I was working on before was on Redx, where I was a software engineering core engineering team there, and in the early stages, our goal was basically tokenize real estate, right? As most companies are doing it. And if you look at real estate or anything in finance, it's very traditional. Mm-hmm. So
the most traditional of it.
It's really conservative. If you think about changing, they don't want revolution. They just want to solve the business use cases, right? The problem is from a real estate agent or some developer is you want to have easy transaction, right? And that's extremely hard to do because there's a lot of regulations. I like the house, you look from it, I want to buy it. It's going to take you a lot of process to actually convert that customer interest into sales, right?
Yeah.
So with tokenization and other coins are taking place, that's going to be really accessible to do. And all the real estate development companies, the huge ones, right? They have enterprise systems in play. So in the future, they do need they need to join the revolution to solve their business use cases. So if the business demands joining the party, they will do it. But out of interest, out of soul, humanity, I don't think any business in a capitalistic system is going to do it.
For sure, and I think it's important also to think about the intermediaries between, let's say, remember we talked about the Carrefour. That's a French kind of Walmart.
The French Walmart.
Yeah, but they have maybe 10 times less shops around the world. But anyway, what they do, they introduce blockchain because they want to make sure that their suppliers, small farms, actually delivering the food which they asked to deliver. Yeah. And that serves as independent verifiers. So they put these marks on that packages of chickens, actually, and then making and then kind of looking at the blockchain and seeing that actually the package which was packed and that actually delivered. So what I'm saying is that small business can be also very big initiator of using the blockchain.
And small business obviously can be more agile than an enterprise.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm expecting to see a lot of innovation coming from small businesses who are growing.
As it should be.
Yeah.
Because basically what we have with that system, it's like vice versa. Bigger company, the more innovation we expect from it.
Yeah.
But it must be different.
So let's shift on to the next topic, because I know we're going to dive a lot deeper into this a little later. So we've got some more statistics for everyone who's constantly coming back to keep up with how things are growing or developing. So Blockchain Capital, a crypto fund, it's invested in a ton of companies. It actually has Jimmy Song as one of the partners. So they conducted an online survey, and essentially they were looking more into the progressive growth or adoption of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, knowledge about blockchain. So the main conclusion of this new survey is that 9% of the U.S. adult population owns Bitcoin right now. That alone is that sounds a little higher than what I've seen, what I've expected, and leads to we can pull up or remember some of our previous numbers that we found, but that means that more than 30 million people in the U.S. have already purchased some Bitcoin. And so 21% of people said that they would prefer Bitcoin to government bonds.
Well, here's it. Because that, first of all, I don't think it's really represent the statistics, because they made a survey based asking 2,000 people, or like a survey which involved 2,000 people only. That's not really the statistical base.
Pretty small sample size.
Yes. The second thing is that 9% probably is an over-exaggeration, because usually that small surveys include people you kind of in your close social circles. See what I'm saying? It's mostly
people shared around
educated people. Yeah, they got that. Unless, of course, it's a very, very sophisticated survey, which has
probably not. Response bias is a real thing.
Yeah, but when I look at it, I use it as a basis to make some speculation. And one of the speculation which I'm mostly interested is, or not mostly, but interested is growth rate of Bitcoin ownership, because there are different things, right? We can use Bitcoin, we can buy Bitcoin, or we just can't know about the Bitcoin, because me is really just asking, have you heard about the Bitcoin? Yes, great, adoption rate growing up, but that's not true. So what do you guys think about that?
I think that over the coming years, over the next few years, that people will not know that they've bought Bitcoin. I think when Fidelity is doing everything that they're working with and rolling some of those things in, I think adoption's going to go up. Whether or not people talk about it, I know we're going to keep talking about it, but 9% does seem high to me too. But I think that as this gets rolled into more, traditional finance instruments, that
no, that's interesting.
Go up.
You think that some of the services, products, companies that people interact with will start utilizing Bitcoin or related cryptocurrencies without them even knowing?
I think that with my 401k, I don't know all the companies that are in that. I don't, and I do pick up the only time I buy bonds ever would be in my 401k, and usually I try to reduce that amount and go with just stocks. But that's me, younger, and I want to take the risk.
Now's the time.
right. But I think, I think Fidelity, and I like them. I've used them for years, and
I think it's a very good example, because now everybody heard about the Ripple, right? So next maybe 5 years, nobody will know how your money actually transferred from bank to another. We using cryptocurrencies as an intermediary transferring like a tool or not. So because now everybody use SWIFT, right? But in the near future, everybody kind of already moving to another system. Taking into account that some countries started to be kind of like isolated little bit from the rest of the world for political reasons or for other type of reasons, they have more and more incentives to find something else because their economy cannot be stopped, right? Because it's threatened everything, stability, existence. So people are going to be looking for alternatives, and Bitcoin, that's the first thing they will going.
The one thing I thought was interesting about all of this, though, was that Svet, you had like projected like when we would hit the tip with these numbers, like when we would project like the tipping point of tipping point being 20% of Americans own, Bitcoin. That would be a huge tipping point for the market at that point.
Yeah, and I have already people sending me commentaries and saying, "Oh, no, tipping point is 10%," and there are a lot of discussion about that because it's a very speculative because we don't really know. But there is kind of very interesting, like a pseudoscience behind it. That first 3%, that's initial adopters, so like geniuses who serve the early future of the technology and jump into this train. So the second part is up to 13%. It's the first early adopter. So technically, we all here as an early adopter or initial adopter. And then there is like a medium kind of part of this curve, which is like a shaped. Yes, it's like first adopters, right? So that kind of dividing line is between 13%, 15%, and 20%. That is statistics. Well, that's not statistics, but the science, which I'm basing my opinion.
Yeah.
So based on that, and based on that number which you started to kind of citing, I concluded that the number of the Bitcoin owners in the United States grows with approximately 0.9. With 9%. With a 9% a year. It's a 0.70 something a month. But that's just speculation, actually.
Well, let me throw out a couple of interesting numbers that we can kind of compare to. So, PayPal right now boasts about 235 million active users. MasterCard, 35.7 million American users and another 604 million active international users. Visa accounts for 336 million American users and 736 million users globally. So these are existing payment systems, existing financial systems. Those are the numbers that we actually have to compare to whatever speculative Bitcoin active users we can think of. So I guess the question that this makes me want to pose to you guys is...
Just be careful not to confuse using Bitcoin and owning Bitcoin.
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about.
So these are active users.
But that's a Visa. You usually, it's different thing, right?
Yeah, I guess you always
it's transaction
user of it.
Like a medium of exchange, right? And store of value. What I was talking, it's a user store of value. That's a medium of exchange. But it's still use it.
Yeah. So either way, like you're interacting, you're engaging with the technology or the platform. So at 20, if you're looking, between 10 and 20%. Active users of Bitcoin or holders or what you're speculating on?
Well, right now, according to that statistic, United States population, if you take it only adult population, which is about like a 320 million something, from that number, 9%, according to that survey, actually already own Bitcoin, which is like amazingly high number, 29 million.
Yeah. Exactly. So,
but many people publishing other articles which says the total number of the Bitcoin holder in the whole world is no more than 35 million.
Yeah.
So it's kind of raises this very big discrepancy between two numbers. That's why I'm questioning my own assumptions. That's what I'm doing. Right. I'm saying that I'm speculating, but I'm not sure myself about what basis I'm taking that. I'm doing that because I don't really have any other information. Or I do have, but all of this information are not too much substantiated from my point of view.
So the point that I was getting at, actually, now that we thought about that, is what do we need to see in order to, essentially have the tipping point? Looking at these numbers for what Visa has, and active users is going to be lower than total people that engage with the system. So if we're looking at active users internationally at 604 million, just for MasterCard, what are we going to see with adoption of Bitcoin?
Like $1
how many
trillion
people?
question, actually. So what do you think, Guy?
Like 200 million? Like this is all speculation, but I feel like it's good to compare, right?
Like Scott was saying earlier, conservative when you're projecting these things out. 20% is the conservative number. Like some people say 15. 20% it seems to be a good tipping point. If we can get 20% of Americans using or holding Bitcoin, I think we'll see some interesting things. What's that come down to number wise?
60 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm using holding as a better indicator because actually when you hold something, you feel about that. Because if you use it for transaction, you don't care, right? But if you invest it in that particular assets, then you're really making a stake on the future. That's why I'm using
In a corporate setting for US, if you want like saturation, you're looking for 60 million Americans to sign up for your service. That's just above the number that I think that Americans that have subscriptions to Netflix right now currently, and it's the number that Disney's trying to build to in the next.
That's actually it.
60 million is a solid number to say that you've got adoption.
You just name it, because 9% is 29 million, which give us
20%,
which give us exactly approximately 60 million, 20%, which just
and that's only looking at the US, which project.
Yes, we're talking only about the United States of America, but we all know that as soon as the technology started to be adapted here, it just automatically spread all around the world.
And again, to connect that to part of the idea with Bitcoin is banking the unbanked. Essentially onboarding a whole sector of people who have not really had access to this type of financial support before. So that is a different market, I guess, that is still to be tapped, that has a value to add to the network, to the system, to the technology as a whole. So
that's maybe much more important from the socio-economic point of view rather than from financial. What I mean that
I agree with
the
that.
financial power are concentrated now roughly between three parts of the world, which is America, which is basically China and neighboring countries, and which is Europe. That's where practically 90% of all the financial things happen. But in terms of adoption, yes, of course, most of the world now outside of this banking, regulatory, paramedical system, and they will benefit tremendously from that. But in order of us expecting price rise, that's not those people who do that, right?
So before we shift on, Koushik, did you have any input on this? This is actually probably the best place for you to have input.
This is totally out of my game, but just to make it, I think I've been when you guys are talking, right? I've been thinking about and this maybe talked to countless amount of times, but you guys talking about the tipping point and stuff. I'm thinking, okay, maybe that might be true. Let's hypothetically put 60 million as the tipping point where people are comfortable with it, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you get to the 60 million, right? That's the real question. Before a consumer like me, right? Pretend I'm not a millionaire. I can't just put $50,000 into Bitcoin. You're talking about adoption, so the middle class American or
utilization.
Adoption. Yeah. So I think about clarity, right? Right now, there's not much clarity about what, even if they understand technically high-level business use case, what cryptocurrency is and stuff. How are you going to use it, or what are the government regulations and stuff? That's
a constant thing that comes up in every podcast is issues with regulations. So
yeah, we talk a lot about that. But do you really need to know how it works in order to be able to buy that?
How it works is in how does the transaction, not internal technical, but
high level,
okay, you're sending Bitcoin, is this legal? How do I file my taxes sending something?
Well, I think in order to buy into something, you have to find some value in it, regardless. So some people, not everyone, derive value from understanding how it works, but not everyone. That's a whole different debate or topic.
Well, think about the gold, right? Nobody actually using, gold has a lot of usage. You can vary it, but people who invest in gold, they don't invest in it as in a use case, right?
Sure.
It's just store of value for them. There are not so many gold, but I think there are like, do you know the percentages, how many people in the States own gold? I just can't remember, but it's certainly higher than number of people who own Bitcoin.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So maybe that's one of the comparisons which we can make.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the entire precious metals market. I don't know if the numbers.
Yeah, by the way, one of the first Bitcoin adopters were the so-called gold bags. Bags, how we call them. People who actually buying gold just because it's gold, and then even paying in shops, which they cannot do by gold.
So I want to ask you. So you made like an analogy, a comparison between gold and Bitcoin, which I think is completely valid, right? If you look from high level. So usually when stocks go down or when there's like a recession, mini recession, what you see is gold, silver, and prices go instantly up. Do you think that cryptocurrency will be treated the same way?
Well, that's a very good question, because many people have suggestion that Bitcoin is a perfect investment because it's asynchronical, so it's not correlated with most of the markets, which I actually don't really believe, but it might be at some point in time when they're going to be less integrated economy than we used to have now, because most of the economy happens in the dollar zone. We use dollars, and it pretty much depends on the political Federal Reserve System, and that makes every assets in the world correlated. And that's basically also one of the problems with gold, because people that's one of the arguments which many people owning gold always makes, that there is a kind of superficial mechanism which doesn't allow gold to grow, which is polite way to say that there are some forces whose interests are kind of behind curtain force, who try to push gold price down. Will it happen in Bitcoin? I doubt that, because it's difficult. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
No, you are. So that's a very good topic, right? So, but like another point I had is like when I was talking to a lawyer in my old startup, right? He was actually a crypto lawyer and stuff, specializing in it. And he was talking about where he stopped believing in crypto because around like 4 people own 70% Bitcoin.
That's another very controversial topic.
So how is that really decentralized in a way?
It's not.
Yeah, so
that's the plain answer.
Well, there is a statistic, and it's easy to find. It's about like maybe 80% of all the Bitcoins are distributed between for about 5 to 10% of all the wallets. So that's how distribution looks like that. So it's certainly not an egalitarian system right there. But even if you think about this 10%, that's not like a 10 guys, for sure.
Yeah.
Because just each... So, for example, one of the most famous wallet, he contains for about 40,000 Bitcoins, which for about 100 million right now. And the people actually monitoring that wallets. And more or less they understand that there is one person behind it, and he not really doing much. So what I'm saying is that yes, Bitcoin is a very specific currency. It's not egalitarian, but it is not so much manipulated as many people think. Because put in that one room even 2 Bitcoin maximalists, they will disagree about everything. That's a nature, because why Bitcoin represents the decentralization? Because most of the people don't believe in that coordinating their efforts will serve their own goals and purposes long term. So ideologically, there's people, they are individualists. So that's, at least I think, that kind of safeguard for us, at least on the short term, because maybe in the future they're going to be like a big conglomerate owning Bitcoin, all of this like sons and other people who inherit Bitcoins. They probably can put it in some kind of funds, and from these funds, they're going to be like more possibility to control Bitcoin, not now.
Well, I mean, the issue I think comes down to, it's not necessarily what they have done, it's the fact that they hold that small group of, whales holds the power to greatly affect the network.
Right now, that's true.
They don't necessarily do it at the moment, but it's in everyone's head.
I think they do. So basically, they speculate widely. So everybody knows. It's just like a common topic now through all of the YouTube that there is this bull traps every time when there is a huge spike in Bitcoin. Like just recently, last day, it was this spike from 5,300 to pretty much 5,600. Just from nowhere, from blue sky. Nobody knows why. But everybody understands that a couple of whales may be starting to buy. Well, that's the nature of the emerging markets. It was the same when America started to create their railroad system. You remember that? But you don't remember that? I do not remember that. I mean, back in the day. Excuse me, what I meant is, do you remember that from your education? So there were maybe 100 different railroad lines invested, and no more than a couple survived. So it's wide speculation, so maybe that's what we have to expect.
I'm willing to say to Koushik that I don't know. That's the answer. A lot of it doesn't make sense, like Svet's saying, things just, it's volatile, goes up, down, I can't say why. There was a time where I felt like we could see news articles and know that this is what's happening. That's gone away. Like China has pretty much been mute for the last few years on are we banning it, are we not banning it? We used to see those market sways all the time, and I haven't seen those. I haven't paid attention to it much either. That's maybe I'm just not looking. But this past week I was paying attention. I have no idea why it went up to 56 and then.
And actually, I think that the very positive trend in 2019, which everybody now realizes that we have kind of see that all this community of cryptocurrency kind of really hold value. So I'm not saying we're reaching bottom, but I'm saying like we kind of start to see the bottom, like through this murky water, what's happening. Of course, it's everything about psychology. So everything can go to zero, but psychology, it's what run economies. And now I see more and more people become more and more like a certain, Bitcoin might be kind of fluctuating, but that's a thing. More or less.
I would say my psychology lately has been like I've been spending more of it lately because I've just been like, it's why down not? Over whatever, but why not just spend some and usually I'm used to be very tight-gripped. I'm not investing in other people's companies anymore, but I'll spend some here and there just because.
Maybe that's the mentality to have right now.
I don't know. That's just mine.
We'll find out in 10 years.
But maybe that's everybody. That's what everybody has to start doing because we are just so much concentrated on that Bitcoin as assets. We have to concentrate what we do with Bitcoin by the end of the day.
And the things I'm spending on are like my own projects and things like that, and developers and things like that. I'm just been like,
you're still investing.
Bet on me.
You're investing in a different direction. Yeah. And I think that's where we should be, right? Yeah. So I think it's a good place to segue back into the enterprise space. There's a lot of investment going on over there, taking traditionally, earned money and putting it into the development of blockchain technology. So, one of the most recent things that's happened that I'm sure we can talk about is AWS, Amazon. Just dropped their blockchain as a service platform. I was going through our AWS, used to host our blog and a couple other things, and it popped up on the side, like next to EC2, oh wow, it's actually here for me to interact with. There's been a couple others that have come out recently. Another is Samsung has recently announced that they're both supporting the Ethereum blockchain and looking to create a private version of it, or a private chain that interacts with the public Ethereum chain. So trillions of dollars of money that is, out here that is kind of starting to be looking at the technology, and actually we're seeing implementations actually come out. So I just kind of wanted to like talk a little bit about this, like this development. Like, it's no longer just speculation on the development side. It's here it is. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
So let me just start it off.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. So the first thing you mentioned, AWS, right? They're pretty late to the game if you think about it, because Oracle has been out, right? IBM been out extremely long time, and then you have Microsoft Azure. They're part of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, and then now they're supporting Hyperledger Fabric.
Yeah.
So if you compare, and this may be one we talked about earlier, this BOSS platform, we call it blockchain as a service, is more of like I like to think about it as underneath a subgroup of IaaS, if you guys know what that means, infrastructure as a service.
Okay.
Right? So traditionally, this is coming from an enterprise background with traditional technology stacks. Pretend you're running like some kind of tech application, right? You look at the stack of the application. What are the underlying requirements? So does this web server uses, some kind of like system thing and stuff like that? The cloud services are thinking, how about we automate it, right? Instead of like going inside a virtual machine, setting up yourself, traditionally there's other services for that, right? Why don't we just implement that business logic into blockchain? So what that allows is huge, right? If you guys think about when AWS really took off, right? I don't know if you guys know the story of AWS. AWS was really created by mistake, right? So a common story is Jeff Bezos is a very prudent, cheap person. I forgot the CTO at that time. They invested heavily into like on-premise mainframes, databases. So in the back in the day, when a startup was going into business, they would choose an office for the space, right? Because the space is certain part of the office space will actually hold mainframes.
Yeah.
They don't care. Like that was a huge point, right? So that's what Amazon did too. They invested a lot because they predicted growth, right? They invested a lot, and then they realized we don't need that much stuff. So, and then there's a story like, how do we make money off it, right? We don't want to spend a dime. It's like, why do we service our space, our data, connect it to the world, so startups who don't have to like invest a lot of time can go and connect to it? That's the first service that came out in the cloud called a virtual machine, right? Off-premise virtual machine.
Yeah.
So right now, startups are connecting to some data center like in Europe. They may be in California, Silicon Valley, or connecting to Alaska or something. So, and then slowly you have something called like infrastructure as a service, where you're putting infrastructures on the cloud. Instead of virtual machine, you're like, okay, I want a virtual machine. My environment, I want this. I'm going to do a merge stack, put all the merge stuff inside it, and I'm going to start developing in it, right? So then you don't need system engineers, right? If it's serverless, you don't need system engineers. You don't need system admins. Makes it cheap, lean, and deliverable.
Yeah.
And this is huge, both in the enterprise space, because companies are already in the cloud, right? Almost every enterprise company is in the cloud, unless government tells them you can't be on the cloud.
They need full secure.
So what's that going to happen is going to reduce the cost of implementation. It's going to reduce the cost of technical complexity in adopting it. And number two, it's going to help startups especially well. If you ask any startup founder early 2005, 2006, they're like, they love AWS, right? So Quora came from AWS. Quora could have been created because they don't have that much like funding or something without AWS or anything like that. So you're probably going to see a lot of startups who are using the BOSS services and stuff. And for enterprise, it's going to be less technical complexity. Number two, it's going to be easier to adopt in their pre-existing infrastructure. So,
yeah, I think that's actually a good point is when you talk about how AWS... Hey you, congratulations on making it this far into the podcast. We had a few technical issues with the audio from this point on, and we wanted to make it up to you. So go ahead and drop a comment on the YouTube video for this podcast and tell us what you think about blockchain in the enterprise space. And I will personally send you a DM with a discount code to one of our upcoming developer courses. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. What AWS enabled
Yeah.
It's a slight difference in that I think AWS people were finding a cheaper way to do some of the things they were already doing.
Yeah.
Right. But in this case, with the advent of blockchain as a service, it's enabling people to do things that they couldn't do before. Right. Having to track down people to actually build out or even understand what specific blockchain they want to integrate or what they want to utilize.
I just want to ask the question because can you throw some number on top of that? So you're saying that it allows to reduce costs, it allows to maybe attract more small business to the business kind of processes. So do you have some idea what projections might be?
Yeah, talking from an enterprise space, I don't have exact numbers for a startup, right?
Yeah.
For enterprise, what usually happens is you have a company account or something like that, where pretend you are you're using AWS and you're a big vendor or something, right? You want to implement blockchain technology to solve your business use case. What usually happens is they set up a yearly fee for the cloud service, like 100,000, 200,000. And by that fee, you can use like the whole marketplace in the cloud, right? So it really depends on B2B sales rather than but infrastructure costs is something I do not have the numbers for, but I do presume it's going to be lower than setting up your own dedicated guy who you pay $100,000 per year just to set up something.
So what I'm trying to squeeze you for is basically the number between this state when there is no blockchain, enterprise solution for blockchain, or cloud solution for blockchain, and there is a cloud solution for blockchain, and why it is profitable for Amazon or Samsung doing that thing. What is
so from profitability, I think analogy you can take a look at between cloud services. Pretend you comparing Azure with AWS, right? Or compare Azure, AWS, and then IBM Bluemix, whatever, right? So they sell the cloud as a marketplace. So they sell it like as a phone, and the apps are pre-installed.
The different services.
Services are apps, they're pre-installed, right? So they're not looking for profitability by single usage. They're looking for profitability when they're wholesaling it.
So Amazon in this case, it's almost exactly like I first saw it, right? Is here are all of the different possible things that my company would need to utilize. Yeah. It's all beautifully laid out. It's all here. It's all extremely accessible versus me trying to set up my own storage, me trying to set up my own nodes, everything all at once. And when you think about it that way, it makes total sense that all these cloud providers, they're going to need to have blockchain as a service. They're going to need to be eventually just as good at providing that service as they are as hosting or storage.
I think
Jason doesn't think so.
Well, no, I do think so. I think the part of it is the play, though. It's like the more apps they have, the more draw they've got to their platform, and they're just trying to sell their cloud stuff. It is
at the end of the day,
and blockchain's a big buzzword, so and Amazon is late in the game on this. Microsoft's been doing it with Azure, with Ethereum for a long time. They're one of the first. You can just push the button, it fires your node up, and you're good to go. I mean, now some people might not want to pay for the full cloud just to have a node running, but there's here or there.
I think it's something like where they also have features where pay as you go, pay only for the services you use.
Yep, and a lot of them go on that too. Microsoft does that. Just pay for use.
I think we just found
just pay for that.
We just discovered another way the corporation will be serving us, small people, because as soon as they start to develop their own marketplaces, they have to push these marketplaces to consumers. A lot of advertisements, a lot of talks about the usability of blockchain for their small guys. So more people come to those platforms, more people going to be using crypto.
There's
way to us.
So that's one of the things that I was kind of thinking this is leading to is, so now that all of the major players have blockchain as a service as one of their offerings, what do you think these startups are going to be coming in and utilizing that for? What do you think is going to be the primary thing? Like you've already seen some of the use cases, but where do you see the kind of initial enterprise adoption coming from?
So startups and enterprise are completely different, right? There can be multiple startups. There can be enterprise startup where they're creating some tool or product for the enterprise,
or an enterprise use
acquisition or sales. For a startup is maybe like changing the world or creating consumer products, right? So from the startup space, I'm not too familiar with like changing the world consumer product space. For enterprise startups and enterprise sales,
or maybe to help lead it a bit better. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what do you think are the pros, like those points that make someone, whether they're from the startup realm or the enterprise realm, what are they most excited about now that they have an easier access to blockchain?
Yeah. So one of the challenging points is setting up your infrastructure in blockchain, because number two, it's not, when you're talking from Hyperledger Fabric, that's where my development experience comes from. When you're setting up Hyperledger Fabric, it's a complete new tool. There's no, usually enterprise have tools for everything. Like you have Splunk, you have, Redis, there's enterprise version. There's tools to solve a problem. Yeah. When something's new, there's no tools, right? So this is probably gonna be one of the first tools to set up your infrastructure. So before all this BOSS services, you had to go inside your VM, you had to set up your ports, you had to open your networks, you had to go talk to your second organization because it's decentralized. You have to go to company B and like, yo, set this up for me. Please coordination, set this up. And half the time it fails. Yeah. It's open source, right? It fails, right? So what these companies are doing is they're taking accountability too, right? So if you're in a cloud, right, if you're using their service and it fails, you have support. You have support. They have to solve your issues. Yeah. So it makes really complexity less complex, right? And people love less complexity.
I don't think it's fully addressed your question.
Well, that's the first part. So they're reducing the complexity. They make it, say a startup has a certain budget, or any company has a certain budget that they can allocate to integrating this technology. If they can, lean on Amazon or lean on Oracle to provide most of the infrastructure behind it, and keeping the tooling really straightforward, especially when it comes to having multiple companies in the consortium get involved on the same chain. I do see extreme value of that. But I guess so the deeper question I'm trying to get is why? Why are they jumping onto it? The tooling is like a reason as to why maybe they choose one over another. But what is the direct benefit that more people will be able to realize now that it's more open?
If I allowed to put it more kind of from other perspective, think about what type of advertisement can Amazon make for people. What does Amazon say in this advertisement? Came to us, it's easy to do what? To open your restaurant blockchain, I don't know. So what do you think?
It's easy to deploy your network.
That's true, right?
So for instance, if we're talking about the benefits of blockchain to these companies. So you're going to be able to secure stuff better. You're going to be able to reduce trust. So some of the things we've already talked about, but what do you think are the top ones?
For enterprises to adopt blockchain.
That are now accessible because of this.
So I think, sorry, misunderstood. So we're not talking about blockchain, we're just talking about blockchain for enterprise use.
I'm talking through the accessibility of BOSS.
Okay.
What do you think are going to be the greatest drivers of people adopting it?
I think I mentioned this before, like trust, right? Yeah. Trust, accountability, huge. Everyone has accountability in businesses. And the third thing is basically, and this goes down a little bit, marketability, right? You are creating some, like, you're going to market your product saying, we're using the latest technology that it goes back to trust too, right? Yeah. We're creating trust for you, and it goes accountability and stuff.
So you say marketability. Yeah. So is that saying that when a company, it goes out and talks to anyone, investors, consumers, saying that they're utilizing the latest technology, like in this case blockchain, is that a really valuable thing for them?
Yeah, so let me go back to give a real life example. Maybe this may solve. So I think everyone uses supply chain a lot in enterprise settings, and that's a valid case, but let's move away from it, right? Let's talk about something very unique, and I think it's going to happen.
Okay.
Let's talk about something about servers for a second. I think everyone probably heard this example or something. So usually in a distributed system or something, there's actually a centralized server that redirects it to different servers to get their whatever they want it to. For example, is if you search something in google.com, what is the weather? And if you search something else, employee IDs, right? Hypothetically, I just presume people use the same search bar and stuff, right? There is going to be some internal mechanism that redirects your access control permissions, which means, oh, this guy's not an employee, he can't look at other employees and stuff. So, but there's going to be one or two distributed servers doing that whole load, right? What if those one or two distributed servers get compromised, right? So it's a security issue right there, right? So it goes back to where blockchain was created, security, trust, and stuff. When I say trust is very high level, right? Inside trust, you got different branches to it. Security, you need your infrastructure really secure. Resiliability, it can go down. It will go down, right? It's natural. There's no such thing as ideal infrastructure in technology. It always goes down. If it goes down, how can we make it more reliable, right? And the third thing is adoptability, right? What we're noticing is blockchain actually helps. Coming from open blockchain side, people might think, we're changing traditional way of business. Coming from enterprise blockchain side, we're saying, okay, let's adopt this so we don't have to change everything. We just improve the current business processes.
Yeah, it's a slightly different approach.
And one of the huge things that's going to take off is actually, I presume it's going to be something where government regulations dictate your business process, where it dictates more security. Let's just take a look at voting, right? If you look at how you track, I'm not talking about America, I don't know how America votes or something, maybe electronic or something, but if you look outside of America, most countries use something called EVMs, electronic voting machines, right?
Yeah, they do it in America as well. So different. Depend on the legislation in the states.
Yeah.
Famous case of Florida when they have these machines and then spend time to recount machines. During this famous election between Gore and.
Yeah. So when I was going for EVMs and stuff, especially in developing nations and such, you're going to need some kind of trust mechanisms, right? I'm guessing if the government body is not corrupt, right? They actually want a transparent system, and they don't want everybody. They want to have something that's reliable as it talks about all the attributes. At the same time, creates trust.
So what you're saying that Samsung or Amazon can actually propose to use their system for governments?
Yeah.
As
especially if you look at, I think what's going to happen is EMRs. So what EMRs are electronic medical records.
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is there's something called HIPAA, right? HIPAA is a regulatory body that governs the flow of medical records, or there's some criteria. If you look at blockchain, it's one of the most secure ways of holding data, right?
Yeah.
Transaction data. And I'm pretty sure.
What do you mean by secure, right? Because if you mean secure that nobody see your information, that may be not true.
The way.
Like nobody's changing your information.
Sorry.
That's another thing.
So let me just rephrase this. The way of creating a deterministic system.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
Creating a deterministic system where something fails, right? It's not random. It's close to. Ideally, it won't be random, right?
Yeah.
So. And HIPAA and other government agencies dictate that. And number two, let's take a look at finance, right? Or how you hold SSN numbers. Pretend you want to buy a quote for a mortgage. You put your SSN, credit history, and stuff. Government dictates how you hold the data.
Well, sometimes it's not government, maybe it's another regulatory body, but you're right.
Yeah, some kind of regulatory board. And you can solve blockchain. We're just noticing a lot of stuff where you can use some kind of deterministic principles to improve the business flow.
Which, by the way, may be very, very detrimental because, as you know, the standards for keeping data changing constantly.
Yeah.
And if you have your personal information, your medical record kept in one standard in blockchain, which cannot be changed, then government suddenly changing in 10 years to another standard, what kind of problem you have?
Yeah.
Right, so you have kind of delete the immutable, not deleted records, or start new blockchain, which kind of undermine all the idea of that one. So,
Or look at GDPR and the right to be forgotten.
yeah, because of that, by the way, yes, Ethereum tried to make that, solve that problem,
And this is where a different side of enterprise blockchain comes in place. So in Hyperledger, where it's widely considered as the perfect enterprise blockchain, right? We say something called modularity, right? What that basically means is, let's look at consensus, right? You don't like using one consensus, there's going to be a marketplace that you can plug it in. You don't like it how they're making deterministic principles or something, hashing, put another one in. You don't like the identity management system, put another one in. Having said that, creating a modularized architecture for a framework, there are some pros and cons, right? The pro is it's very unique. It can be customizable. The con is it's not going to be that, how would you say, how fundamentally blockchain as one that cannot be changed, right?
Yeah.
And that actually raises another issue which you mentioned about that permission net and permissionless blockchain. I mean, you mentioned it before we start that conversation. So are there going to be the possible, okay, so the question for you. What do you think the most likely future? So most of the enterprise blockchain, they're permission net, right? So you have to pass for all this QIC, maybe more complicated procedure in order to be authorized, permitted, or you can be deleted from that, restricted from that platform. But as many people predict, they're going to be kind of merge between permissionless and permission net. Do you think it's true?
I think hybrid is the future, right? Hybrid is exactly the future. But creating a hybrid blockchain is going to take some time.
So when you say a hybrid blockchain, you mean someone
permission and permissionless.
Created from scratch or integrating with existing blockchains?
See, that's something where technically, where it's like, I don't know the direction where it's going, right? There are some products out there where we're mentioning earlier before the show started where there's some, you can say the tools, right? I don't know if that's correct terminology, where you connect two stuff together. And I don't know if the connections are one of the most complex nature of any, because blockchain in itself is completely new and complex. Making a bridge connecting one complex city to another complex city is extremely hard, right?
Interoperability is one of the huge selling points of certain chains, right?
Yeah. So, and if it's going to be reliable, like if you look at the blockchain space right now, and if you honestly put it out there, right? Regardless of open enterprise blockchain, right? Is the technology absolutely there where it's 100%, 365 days a year? And that's perfectly all right, right? If you look at it, it's growing right now. But maybe in 3 to 5 years, it will be there, right? As in any technology, I think we're looking at it, it's the last 20% of the timeline where massive growth happens.
80-20 rule applies there. Yeah, it makes sense.
The last 20%.
It's like a hyperbolic growth.
It's exponential. Technology does not grow linearly. If you look at any technology products, it does not go linearly. It's exponential, right?
Yeah.
And what we're hoping with is blockchain. We are in the 20% right now. And hope
the best.
The idealistic thing, we're maybe 20%, right?
Oh, you 20% out of 100. So there's 60 to go before.
You mean like?
No. I honestly think like maybe we're 40% work because blockchain is not. It's been there since the 1970s. Like there's some concepts of blockchain. The concept has been growing and stuff, right? Where what happened with Bitcoin is just a good use case.
It's the first major
use case came out from it, and then what happened with other stuff is money drives growth, regardless. So what I'm hoping is we're on the 20% of exponential growth.
Well, yeah, I think we are still under 10%, but it's only strengthen your point.
Well, and I'm phrasing this from like Karthik. I think he's probably one of your friends. I think he's an instructor or professor at Stanford, and he made this analogy where if you look at AI and ML, right? When I say 20%, and he mentioned this one. If
Jason wants to make some commentary, please join our conversation. You're sitting there like on a couch.
Well,
Yeah, come on.
We'll get to my opinion in a bit.
Yeah. No, I've seen your opinion in your face. I already seen your opinion.
You see
Please express it to us.
Well, yeah, I like AI. I like that presentation that he gave.
Oh,
recently.
so
yeah. Like,
yeah. Okay, you don't like the 80-20% rule?
no, I like that too. I like that too.
Okay.
My question has always been, when it comes to enterprise blockchain, is I feel like with regulations in the United States in particular, which I know the best of because I'm American, but there's a mentality on like, hey, if you're not doing anything wrong, then why can't the government have all your information? But yet, and companies have to report to the government too and give out information. But I feel like publicly there's a standard, that the public gets this public, and the enterprises get this other complete different treatment. So I think at the end of the day, I think the future is not hybrid. I think the future will be open, because I think people that are doing the open projects are a better benefit to society. And I think they will always have an advantage over any of the enterprise stuff at the end of the day. It's just a matter of when regulation comes in and says, hey, companies, you have to make everything public. And when that happens, then they're not hiding behind walls anymore. But
When will that happen?
that's my opinion. But I don't want to just mean like, when will that happen? And I really do think I'm on the table. Let's do that. But I do like what Hyperledger is doing, and I do like the projects. I like what's going on there. Businesses aren't just going to open up their books to all their competitors. It's not going to happen unless everybody has to do it at the same time. And even then, they'll try not to. So
they will definitely try not to.
right. So.
I love
I'm
that.
not trying to just change the topic or take over.
No, that was absolutely.
But you wanted to know what I was.
I was
saying.
wondering
That's always been my question for this. Is what's going to happen first? And at the end of the day, I feel like the public gets regulated before the companies do. So it's probably how it'll end up. But I don't like that that's how it goes. But
So I want the others to respond to that, but quickly I want you to finish with, in your mind, like how long do you think it would take for something like that to realistically happen?
Realistically happen. I mean, it goes back to our first topic today with this global financial system that Vitalik was talking about. If we're really going to go for that, people are going to have to be open to be people. If he's talking about an open system, yes,
and people running companies as well.
Right.
No.
I think the younger people that are coming up are fine with it being open.
Yeah.
It's this older generation that's deep-seated in multinational companies. They're not going to share that info. They're not going to do it. Is there jobs there as they're adopting blockchain? And I feel like, there's lots of jobs there. But at the end of the day, I think that if these companies are adopting a public thing that was public first. Yeah. It's not the other way around. Mm-hmm. And so they're moving away automatically by taking blockchain, So how far is that going to go? I don't know. I'll have fun watching and talking about it each week.
Yeah. Well, just the thought of generations actually is a really good one. Right. Like,
I mean, it's with the cloud too. It's like we're talking. Businesses are now functions as a service. They're taking everything in the cloud. They don't care. They're sharing all the information. Who cares? It's just the business logic that's important at the end of the day. And even with we got Amazon talking and and how late they are to this game, but the step is not just infrastructure as a service; it's back end as a service of your company. And as we get into back end and functions, more of that's opened up. And there's going to be people scared of sharing their stuff, but if you're a good business and you're not doing anything wrong, and your numbers equal what you're saying in your quarterly earnings statement.
Yeah. It's a new global financial system.
You've got one.
Actually, the more we think about that, the more it's become exciting, because it's absolutely made that clear. So we have practically two opposing worlds standing in the
And I appreciate
Yes.
Both.
The most important, the most fascinating to me personally is that we never in the history of the economy see the actually small guys like us being able to really compete with big corporations. I mean, not competing on the level of consumers, but on a historical level. What's economical concept will be accepted by the whole society. I think that was your point. Because
I
what
mean,
you're
the internet
saying,
was supposed to do that, you know, it was supposed to level the playing field, and we saw that it didn't, because you had to have a computer in order to get in. So we cut out a whole group of people in society that weren't able to take part of the web.
Yeah.
These big organizations got entrenched, and now they control the web.
I think your
blockchain
point
is supposed to be decentralized. You know?
I believe your point goes deeper than that, because your point telling us that I don't really care. That's what you're saying. As I imagine you do. I don't really. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I don't really care what there's enterprise guys doing. I'm going to be doing my stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's me. You know.
But there are millions of people like you, millions, and they're going to be looking at your guys, enterprise, and saying, okay, I can do that better. And that's back to that point that probably you, enterprise software developers, going to create this perfect repository of the personal information based on the government registers. But then what happened? Government changed their opinion. But in the world of the privateers, that's going to be the standard for maybe much longer time.
Yeah.
Just because of this consensus we are able to reach.
No,
You see the point?
no, definitely. I think capitalism. This is the whole concept of capitalism, right? Consumer drives demand, right? That's basically it. If you're talking about,
Unfortunately, it's not true anymore. Yeah.
I mean, no, let's take a look at Uber, right? The consumer wanted Uber, so what did the government do? They adapted their policies around ride sharing and stuff, and
Some governments did not.
yeah,
Some airports.
Some airports.
Yes, they're a little fine with the time.
So you're taking from a really low-level concept where you're taking some airports are adopting, right? Why are they adopting? Because the consumers, the passengers want it, right?
Yeah.
And especially one of the fundamental things we may disagree, or most people, we are still a republic, right? With the democracy underneath it. We are not a mob rule, right? So if you look at the concept of democracy, it's basically mob rule. Majority wins. We are not majority wins at all. Having said that, we take majority votes a lot, right? That's how governments or administrations are created. So the guys who are in charge will have to appease the guys who are voting for them. So having that, regulations will change according to the consumer general public demand. The only thing that may have a hard time is institutions, right? Because institutions are more powerful
than individuals.
individuals, right? But the only way, as Sweat said, or Jason said, the only way you can change institutions is unity between the consumer base.
Or you have people, well, I was going to
The
say,
only real way we can change institutions that are competing and beating them in their own game. That's the way we change institutions usually.
or
At least on the
people,
economic side of things.
This change of opinion can ruin a business real quick.
Yeah, I remember the time when we started to develop oral internet applications, and that that corporation actually had to follow that trend, because at that time we were investing in these small enterprises who were able to produce, to kind of cut costs dramatically and sell these products just directly to consumers through the websites. At the same time, corporations at that time, they use like a telephone and calling their preferred customers. And then in a couple of years, corporations just pick up the trend and overcompeted most of the small enterprises, like medium business. And that's kind of going back and forth. But blockchain provides this unique opportunity to kind of cement that, to make it, to split that, right? To make that one blockchain for, I don't know, decentralized, completely freedom-loving people, and another for you guys, who are more like a corporate, more security type of kind of, but that's okay.
Yeah. And that's absolutely great, right? So I don't know if you have I'd like to talk, and this may be. No.
I like to divert the attention of people from the main topics you've taken. So please.
No, we've actually covered some stuff that I wasn't expecting to, but I think is actually really valuable.
I think this is going to be, and this may be, I'm going to answer a lot of questions with that.
Yeah.
I think this is a really good segue to where there's misconceptions of enterprise blockchain.
And let's dive into that now. Now we're looking at the other side.
I think, okay, let's talk a little bit of and this gets me really giddy. Let's talk a little bit of history of the pirates of Silicon Valley who created technology, right?
Mm-hmm. Like Anderson.
Yeah.
Anderson, I'm sorry.
So
Landscape.
yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about where in the initial stages, you guys can be part of probably Silicon Valley initial stages, there was anti-open source initially in enterprises, right? If you look at the famous history of Microsoft, it was very asshole-ish. Quite frankly, it was asshole-ish to small guys, right? They would go in there cutthroat. There's a famous story, I forgot the company name, where Linux was actually huge. It was going to take off. Linux is taking off right now, right? No, it's actually taking off right now. It was there. It was almost functionally good back then as well. If you look at any enterprise right now, they're not even touching Microsoft anymore. Microsoft servers on their VMs. But why didn't that happen a long time ago? Because there's ruthless mechanisms where they thought if open source is not going to make me money,
then
I'm not going to harness it.
Yeah.
So, having said that, let's segue into the current Hyperledger framework. And when everyone talks about enterprise, they talk about Hyperledger because that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
It's the most adoptly. So
it's most visible as well.
So
It's really easy to use.
yeah. So
It's a nice product.
yeah, no, it's a beautiful product, right? So if you think about it, let's think about it for a second. So Linux Foundation is basically the administration or whatever you have, Hyperledger Foundation, right? Linux Foundation was responsible for a beautiful number of products, right? Node.js, right? And let's hold the concept of Node.js, right? Node.js is a beautiful framework for server-side JavaScript. So it was open source. Linux Foundation relies on open source stuff, right? Now you almost have every enterprise using open source Node.js, and you may be thinking about it, why did corporations, and they're actually actively collaborating on it. When I talk about enterprise, I'm talking about tech enterprises.
Yeah.
Like Facebook or Apple or whatever. Like they're collaborating and improving the product as a whole, but they're not getting money off it. So where did the thinking change? I think that you can resemble the thinking's change when the new generation of thinking comes in, where it's more developer friendly. It's more about relations, right? So if you think of the growth of Microsoft for a second, why is Microsoft the highest point it is right now in stock market? It's not because of the products they're releasing.
I can agree with that.
No, it's because of the consumer they're addressing. They're changed their whole thought process.
Do you mean the way that they're addressing the consumer?
No, the before they used to never market towards.
Are you saying the actual market?
Yeah.
People that.
Yeah, if you look at it, Microsoft's always enterprise, gritty. You go to like traditional, like IT company or whatever, IT department, any company, you have a Microsoft OS, enterprise OS, regulations, PowerShell, you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
That was their whole game. Then they slowly started doing like something, the music player service, hardware and stuff. But if you look at the growth of Microsoft in stock, it's because of their targeted customer now. It's the little guys. Fundamental change. It's the little guys, the developers at hand. They're creating developer tools to enhance their product.
Actually, I never think that I will say that, but I probably agree. I think I'm a long-term Microsoft user, and I'm one of the haters of that company. But you're right. In the past, kind of maybe even 5 years, I started noticing that they drastically changed their approach.
Yeah.
100%.
IBM too. I mean, IBM, all their advertising is here's the developers, making fun of the commercials where like the drawers in front of their face, we have the developer finally, but we're not quite showing you the developer. There's a change, and I do think it's generational too. I mean, it comes down to Okay, finally those communities that didn't have the web, right? They didn't have computers. Now they get computers, but now they can't buy software. What can you get? Open source stuff. I can get open source for free. I can train up on this, and then I go for a job later. Hey, company, I know how you save you money for this tool. We got a free one that works. You know, the companies have, and then it's the consumer, the employer, the people that you're trying to employ to develop stuff. That goes back to capitalism in that, but. The free tool is a free tool, you know.
It almost sounds like the freemium model has you know, gone just from straight focus at consumers to a little bit further back to creators.
And I think it's a cycle, and it's going to get. I think open source is, you know, I mean, all the big guys are making open source tools and making things better. It's just making it easier for, you know, students and people that don't have the money to be able to get in and just use the brain, get a computer, use your brain. Sorry, pound the tape again. You know, learn some stuff that's free, that's out there and available, and.
I think from a sinister side also, it's about controlling.
That too. Who commits? Who commits is a big deal.
Just in time, I started giving my. Now I'm listening. Yes, tell me more about sinister side.
Okay, so the sinister. I guess we're in California. We're all socialists. We're all liberals, right? So we're Silicon Valley. We're all socialist liberals, but we also hate the big tech companies at the same time. So it's about control, right? I think people predict the future is going to be controlled by the developers. I think every tech company already admitted that.
Those will be the last jobs to go.
Yeah, so the future, so what software do you actually subconsciously make the developer want? Right? How do you make them easily accessible for the developer? Because they'll be more comfortable with it, using it, and then later on they can control the flow of the product, right? It's basically like how you have 10 gigs free on Google Drive. Why would they do that? Because it's not even about, maybe it may not even be about collecting the data they have in their product. I think that's illegal anyway, but it's about giving them in your hold, right?
It's a sales strategy.
Control the controller.
Test it out. See if you like it. You know what your pricing model is for these free credits. You know,
it's just that little thing that annoys you. Like, oh, I wish I had a few more gigs, or oh, I wish you didn't have this you know, signed by thing at the end of the email that you can't remove unless you pay for it.
So it's people are thinking software right now, especially VCs right now. They're changing the analogy. Software is becoming a utility. Right?
Software eating the world.
Service and a utility.
Yeah, it's basically like how you think about gas, PG&E. That's software right now. Software as a service is basically a utility, right? And if you make a lot of people use your utility, then you have controlling factor over a lot of stuff in the long run.
That's actually a good point. So you look at you know, the growth of social media as a whole, right? The idea of, you know, having a lot of followers, it's social currency, right? Yeah. That same thing you look at a lot of companies. What's a good example? I think Venmo. Venmo had millions of users, was making zero money off any of them, but they kept getting funding, and this goes for a lot of tech companies because they have adoption. They have a lot of people as the key value metric here, using their software, using their product. So I guess that same model is kind of being applied to the idea of open source, the idea of we want you to have full access like to all of these cool things that we're creating, but at the end of the day, you're still kind of sort of in our mental pocket.
Like, that's a very long-term psychological kind of plot.
But that's how investors are looking at this stuff, right?
That's true. That's true, actually, because, well, if you think about all of this automation or robotic revolution, everything is based on software. All robots will be running software.
Exactly.
And even all these futuristic pharmaceutical products going to be implemented or found by software, by machine learning again at software. So that's very sinister to me, actually, that if those companies really have something like even in the back of their minds, when they support all this free software or like a decentralized software, that's scary.
Yeah, so that's definitely. Now let's continue, right, on where Hyperledger comes in play. So we address a factor why other Linux Foundation is open source, right? So traditionally Linux foundation creates partnerships with big enterprises and they help develop it, right? So it can be from a little guy in his basement developing a product. Usually it's most of the time guys who are paying six-figure by big corporations helping develop the open source software.
Yeah.
That's how Hyperledger Fabric and Hyperledger frameworks and tools were created. Let's specify the Hyperledger Fabric for a second. That's production ready. Everyone's using it a lot.
Yep.
So Hyperledger Fabric was heavily invested by IBM, right? So invested means they invest a lot of resources, things, right? And then you have Alibaba comes in play. You have Oracle coming in play. You have all these other companies. Traditionally, they're competitors. They're doing this. They're selling. So you may be asking yourself. We go back to the same point. Okay, why would people invest millions of dollars when they're working together? And let's go talk about BOSS all of a sudden, right? So every BOSS service, right, in the cloud, or we'll just call it backend as service. Backend as service, specifically blockchain, okay? Or infrastructure as service, specifically blockchain related. They all have Hyperledger Fabric on it. Well, okay, that's great. Everyone else has Hyperledger Fabric. Let's go for competitive advantage. I think that was a question asked earlier, right? What they're doing is they're leveraging the pre-existing fundamental open source development, and they're adding their proprietary software on top of it. For example, when I was working with Oracle earlier, right?
Yeah.
I was playing Oracle Blockchain Service. They, instead of I don't want to be really technical, there's something called LevelDB and CouchDB installed inside the Hyperledger Fabric framework where you can store your data. Oracle is really known for their database, right? They're like, screw this, we have a better database, let's just plug it in and let's just say, hey, come use my BOSS service. You have access to the respected Oracle database. So that's where the economy is driving in, right? Leveraging open source technology, putting proprietary software on it.
On top of it. So it's like, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like a large group of companies who are typically competing maybe in different market sectors. Part of the motivator to focus on building open source technology that everyone can use is there is a baseline of foundational bit of software or whatever it is in this case that they all want to utilize. And the question becomes, maybe if you're looking just at a financial perspective, why not work together to build a baseline that we're all going to use? Like, why would I just spend money to build this out myself when we all kind of agree that this baseline needs to be created, and there could be even parts that directly compete with your offering, but if you keep your value offering proprietary and it's built in that it can be plugged into the baseline open source software, then you could potentially have saved millions of dollars in development costs of creating something by yourself, running it all by yourself, as opposed to having the industry as a whole supporting it together.
And that's wonderful. I mean, when I'm talking about enterprise blockchain, there's a lot in the sector, right? In the blockchain space where morality comes into play, right? I'm not going to comment on the morality of a few groups, huge companies dictating the fundamentals of something. I don't want to put my opinion out there, right? If you think of found it from a foundational development cycle from business, this is beautiful. It's before they're competing against each other, now they're cooperating. The competition is really into this few features that are on there. They're like, okay, whatever. And let's talk about a little bit more. The second thing I want to talk about is we talked about backend as a service, right? We primarily talked about infrastructure as a service. Let's talk about backend as a service. So there's something called QLDB. I don't think it came out yet. You can do a preview version and beta version. It's completely different from Amazon managed blockchain, which basically is an infrastructure as a service. So what that is basically a database ledger that's encrypted and that's immutable. That's all it does.
Straightforward.
I don't even know if the decentralization is there, to be quite frank. So you may be thinking about it, is that fundamentally blockchain, right? But does it matter? like, what if a company just wants a really concrete, immutable ledger that's easy to, like, put on your technical stack? And when we say enterprise blockchain, it's slowly going to come into, there's going to be questions about the definition of blockchain.
Yeah, that comes up all the time.
Yeah, so, and I think coming from enterprise side, where, you know, you have to sell your soul to work, especially in Silicon Valley, to work for the big, because everyone has a dream in Silicon Valley, beat the big guy. That's basically it, right?
Mm. Or get acquired by the big guy.
Yeah, get acquired. I mean,
That's another one.
Exactly, right? But at the same time, you have to look at the products that are being created, right? You have to respect where implementation is going to take place. I think there's two different roles. I've been reading a lot of stuff. When I talk to you guys about open blockchain, it's about changing. It's about changing the status quo for the better. When you're talking about me, I'm like, it's changing the business process for the better.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, to cycle back on what we're talking about, open source and multiple companies coming together, in a small way, or maybe not such a small way, if you look at, take, you know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the market that it serves is consumers as a whole, just people, right? But when you look at the creation of Hyperledger, as an example, multiple large companies, you know, working together, that's almost the same idea. It's like a little bit of some form of decentralization coming into play to create something by working together, all engaging in this network.
Yeah.
Right. Hyperledger implementations as a whole. The best example is typically a consortium, right? Mm-hmm. A section of people, entities, organizations, whatever it is, working in some form of decentralized fashion in a way that they weren't really able to beforehand.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that was, I don't know what my point was, but
that was Koushik's point. You know, like, really, enterprises are going to use the tool that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, traditional blockchains are not the answer to many things. There's very specific things it does it very well, and lots of things it doesn't do very efficient.
Yeah.
And because we probably already coming to some conclusion now, right? So, like, my question to all of us, that what we think the future kind of present us now with enterprise going like their own way, us decentralized freaks going another way, or we gonna merge, or we gonna stay in parallel. So can we reach some conclusion?
That was a really good question.
Well, I'll put in my 2 cents.
Satoshis.
Hopefully Bitcoins. That's what I'm looking back in 10 years. I think the way enterprise is going right now, what we see, again, companies are looking for what is going to work best in their business. Yeah. These solutions are being developed. They right now have some benefits over existing technologies. Yeah. On top of that, enterprises right now have typically more money from different sources of income than just straight funding from investors or, you know, Bitcoin prices rising. Yeah. So they have these sustainability, and they also have an incentive to continue to iterate on this technology. Yeah. Keep it in their R&D until something really works, something takes off. Yeah. And utilize these open source technologies that have been co-developed that they can find their niche on, that they can, you know, I'm sure all of the different blockchain as a service services will have different, will be better in different things, right? And so if these companies can find those unique selling points, they will drive the adoption of that form of blockchain or decentralized technology. On the other hand, I think the existing people who are more focused on open blockchains are going to continue to try and innovate and create entirely new ways of doing things. At some point, I do think there will be a convergence Right.
But that's gonna be like a long.
Yeah, I think that's
future.
far down the line.
So you're like maybe parallel universe type of guy.
Yeah,
Like,
I think there will be parallel bits of growth with bits of interoperability developed. Just any blockchain as a service, I'm sure they're focused on having some form of interoperability so that they can not get left behind, right? If they need to, if someone creates something new and innovative, they don't want to get left behind and not be able to take someone's existing solution and then add some form of additional like value to it. So that's kind of how I see it going. I could be completely wrong. I could be 100% right.
like like if you combine all our four opinions, you're gonna be right. So what's your opinion, Jason?
My opinion is that I believe a lot of these enterprises, even though some of it is open source, they're very much patenting everything that they're doing. So I don't think the convergence is going to be quite there unless there's enterprising people that just want to, the cool thing about blockchain is that it doesn't listen to regulation so well sometimes if you don't want to. If you want to take somebody's patent and make it and release it at an immutable way for the rest of the world, you can now sue everyone. And just give yourself a nice pseudonym or name yourself Satoshi Junior and release it. You can do that.
That's a good one.
Satoshi V2.
That's a good one.
But I think that those types of things will happen before anything converges. Because it's going to be enterprising people that are just going to try to stay anonymous and just throw it out there and see what happens.
So are you a parallel universe or converging?
No. I think for sure they're going to be. Both are going to be going at the same time for the foreseeable future for a long time. So unless some huge government regulation comes through, it makes sense that everybody needs to go one way or the other.
So what's your opinion?
So coming from, I'm going to try and keep it impartial, but my honest opinion right now is from 1 to 5 years, right? I'm talking about, that's all I can actually say. Short term, maybe speculative to long term. I do think what happened with open blockchain, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's more consumer product based. When the traditional blockchain, because that's more has a why value to creating a product, right? There's a purpose to creating a product. But I think there's been recent success stories in enterprise where you may even disagree if it's even blockchain, right? Maybe the marketing tool just put blockchain on the title. That's going to be adopted earlier in a more widely fashion, and it's going to be awkward for me saying this because enterprises are really slow to adopt. But they are going to be adopted if they save accountability money. And accountability is one of the crucial points of any business. If that saves it, it may even just be an immutable database, right? People call it blockchain. We may disagree with them, right? End of the day, it doesn't matter if they implement it.
If the only thing that they value in this case is having accountability where they didn't have it before.
Yeah. However, I do think there's going to be some disruption, right? I think in 1 to 5 years, it's going to be traditional, boring development. We call enterprise blockchain boring blockchain because it doesn't have the whole social effect to it, right? But after 5 years, you're going to see like EOS or some other where it's actually feasible to create a scalable product where you have 1 million users on an application, right? The technology is going to adopt, and the education is equally as important as the technology, right? Yeah. Educating the populace what decentralization actually means, right? I think there's a quote where one of the reasons Arab Spring actually happened in the Middle East or some revolutions happened was
because of the Twitter.
No, that's a very good point. It's Twitter, right? But behind the scenes of that, revolution actually and disruption actually happens if there are more youth, if there are more young thinking, right? And that's statistically proven. If you look at every revolution, come from young people, right? New way of thinking, right? That's obviously going to happen. I think right now is one of the first times in the world where you look at all the emerging countries, and even America is central, right? Young people are driving right now because you have the older population maybe not being that influential or even dying. So you're going to see growth driven by young minds, new innovative minds, and maybe after 5-7 years, there's going to be one disruption, right? Maybe followed by 2 disruptions, right?
So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that going to be major enterprise universe,
I
and
think
all
so,
of the rest going to be joining this little by little. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, joining maybe depends, right?
Yeah.
Joining or one of the enterprises are going to get disrupted. Their way of thinking. I think the way of thinking is definitely going to get disrupted.
So you think it would be like they'd be forced to change or forced to adapt?
Definitely, enterprises
It's going to be like
they don't change unless
Unless they're forced to.
they're forced to, right?
so it's going to be better. Is it going to be like one? I'm trying to interpret what you're saying. Is it going to be like first maybe 2 parallel, but then enterprise going to kind of levitate a little bit toward the independent, decentralized universe, but they're going to be merging more on an enterprise
Yeah,
side.
if there's going to be
Kind of
conversion,
making enterprise better.
yeah, if there's going to be
No, it's okay.
if there's going to be conversions, it's going to be an enterprise just literally using the technology completely.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make their own proprietary permission technology, maybe redundant or second priority,
Back.
just to survive, right? If you look at Walmart versus Amazon is a big, like when internet first came out, I'm pretty sure e-commerce was one of the big use cases that was really popular. There's so many popular e-commerce websites in the dot-com bubble that went up, that crashed, right? And you look at the last survivor wins. Basically, that's why Amazon was the last survivor wins, and he survived, and people got educated, right? It's about trust, right? We all consumer trust, right? They believed in the system, and then suddenly it went up. So maybe something like that will happen in the open blockchain, where people are competing for the same space. There's going to be lots of survival happens. This is basically an analogy between internet when it first came out and blockchain.
Well, it's probably my turn.
Yeah.
And sorry guys, I have to disrupt your rosy pictures about 2 universes. So what I see is gonna be like that.
Oh, it's
So
separate.
what I'm
Parallel,
thinking,
like completely
Yeah.
different.
yes.
Yeah.
Moreover, I think it's gonna be complete disruption of 2 universes, 2 patches of universes. So it means
Yeah.
that it's not gonna be one enterprise movement. It's gonna be different enterprise blockchain in different countries. We're gonna have at the same period of time, because not only of the technology, but because of the social and political movements,
Yeah.
we will have these segmentations in blockchain as well as in the outside world and the technology. Whether we do like it or not, it's probably gonna happen. And probably at some period of time, we might even have separated islands of blockchain idealists living somewhere on outskirts and just don't care about anybody else because they already created theirs. They're like a perfect society they always dream about. And there are going to be people who are completely centralized, are happy with their enterprise solution. And there are going to be other maybe thousands of different patches. Whether we came together, I don't know. I don't really see how we can do that in the future because of just how that all come to the end of the 20th century. We already tried, right? We already tried to make the one standard in technologies. It didn't work. Only in politics and society it didn't work. Now we come that to the point we cannot reach it even on a monetary level. We cannot have a one currency, right? We cannot have anything one. And that probably will sustain itself. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, so so this may be like really out of the blue, right? So I do have to disagree in some aspects, right?
Sure.
If you look at, and this may be quite controversial, but if you look at the internet, I think if you take a look at the internet is an enterprise tool for networking services like Comcast, right? And there is a governing body for the internet. It's extremely centralized.
No, that's not true. I'm saying you why? Because you're forgetting that there is already Chinese internet. And it's completely out, practically all the
No.
separate. And there are other countries which are following the steps of China.
I do believe there is a DNS naming service.
Well,
Internet.
that's right.
There's some
now,
protocols.
There's some protocols that's widely used, right?
yeah, okay, I have to correct myself. You're right. Right now there is a centralized point. I'm sorry, that was my mistake. So, but my point is that that's only for the short period of time. Already many governments in the world start to think to have their own DNS service, and I can name you, for example, Russia. Russia already want to implement their own DNS service, and they already kind of made some changes on legislative level. I'm sure China going the same way. Many other countries want to, it's kind of what's happening. I disagree with this, but I'm saying that that's what's going on.
So
internet, it was a good attempt from you to kind of.
I think when it comes down to it, on Koushik's side here a little bit, I agree with Koushik. The enterprise blockchain guy. But anyways,
you just ruined your credit to the whole open blockchain stuff.
there it is. I don't know, but blockchain is very much protocol based too. So I think that there will be some type of protocols, whatever this protocol is, that can go across all of it in some way.
Interoperability. Yes.
I also agree with you guys. I think interoperability will always be in these protocol creators' minds.
Yeah.
Right. Without that, you are isolating yourself from who knows how much benefit or value by interacting with other communities.
But don't forget that interoperability doesn't prevent us to live in different universes. Absolutely not. It's just like sending our ambassadors to different.
It depends on how granular you're looking at things.
Well, that's true. That's basically always the question of definitions. So, by the end of the day, we probably not too much disagreeing with each other, right? Just
It's
like
just
a question of perspective.
Different perspectives on the same issue. So, closing statement.
we already
Closing statement. Like, I think when we're talking about the growth and stuff, I think there's going to be a little bit more. I like to think of the hype as fog, right? The fog is going to clear when people start realizing about change. Change usually happens when people hurt themselves, right? You don't think what you're doing is right. You think you're doing is right if it's benefiting you, but when it's hurting you, then you think, oh my God, did I do the right thing, right? You look back at your history, you look at the new way of thinking. I think that's going to happen, and we talked about this earlier, when the recession hits, how deep the recession will be. Because there is going to be some kind of crash. That's almost guaranteed.
That's opening another kind of war.
Yeah.
Be careful.
It's just that's a closing statement.
We can go on for 2 days.
That's my conclusion. I think we're going to get a clearer answer where blockchain is headed to after the recession.
And on that bombshell, let us know in the comments what you think about what the recession that is supposedly coming is going to bring. And just from my perspective, I agree with you on that one.
And let us know what are the topics you want us to discuss, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it was just to close. Thank you very much for coming out and giving your opinions and your perspective on this stuff. Honestly, this has been one of the most eye-opening podcasts that we've done, because we're touching on a subject from two different very strong perspectives. I almost think of it from the past leading up to the present, and the present leading up to the future. Two different ways of looking at things. And at the end of the day, we're all living in the present, so all we can do is take actions and lead forward. So there's no better way than to have these types of discussions and really understand and think about what each person who's involved in this is going to do moving forward and how it's going to affect everyone.
Definitely.
So yeah, with that, any closing statements? Let's see. At the Den, we've got some stuff coming up. We partnered with Ethereum Classic Labs. We work with everyone, literally, which is part of why I love being in the space. So we partnered with them. We're doing a workshop, a hands-on workshop, so you can come in and learn how to interact with smart contracts, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a developer. I believe that's on the 15th of May up at Classic Labs. You can find out more information about that on our website. Just go to www.theden.io. We also have our upcoming classes. UC Irvine is coming up. It's probably too late for you to sign up at this point, but keep your eyes peeled for the next ones. We're starting, so we're running in Santa Clara and in San Francisco with Starfish Mission, and Hacker Dojo. Those classes begin at the beginning of June. So if you're interested in learning more about Ethereum or learning from Koushik on the Hyperledger side of things, we actually want people to become fully well-rounded blockchain developers. So there are discounts and incentives for you to take our entire course from Ethereum all the way through Hyperledger and data structure, so you can actually get a job. So those begin in June. Again, more information can be found at theden.io. If you like this podcast, please hit that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Anchor, or any of the podcasting services. Subscribe, comment down below, and just let us know what you think. We want to be as engaged as possible with the community. And we want to make sure that we're not only bringing the information that you guys want, but that your thoughts are heard. So you can also join us on Telegram at Nexus, t.me/Nexus. Any other closing statements?
Well, thank you for being with us this wonderful 2 hours. I hope.
We did it again, man.
We certainly will, yes.
This was supposed to be the quickest podcast we've had.
Under an hour, let's get it done.
And you are welcome to ask your additional questions on my Telegram group, Ask Svet about crypto, and of course join Decentralized Nexus network, also Telegram group. And again, I hope you will be with us next time.
And I just want to thank Koushik for coming out and talking.
Thanks, guys. Just to put like shameless plug. So I do work for the Den, and we are starting a EBC. So that stands for Enterprise Blockchain Computing. We're gonna have one of the first major panels with all the enterprise.
I forgot.
Yeah, I know.
Big
That's the
deal.
whole point of
So we are gonna have the first major panel where we have different guys coming from Oracle, IBM, other BOSS services, and they're going to be talking about their future, their vision, and the problems and the optimism they have for blockchain as a whole, right? So it's going to be widely interesting, and more information to come.
Yeah, so that one, that'll most likely be at Ethereum Classic Labs as well, May 31st. It's a Friday. There'll be pizza. We might even, get something else than pizza because I know a lot of people are tired of it. That'll be a ton of fun. We're going to dive a lot deeper into a lot of these things directly from the directors, the people who are in charge of making these projects happen. With that, thank you very much again for watching, and
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time.